All right, so this is our factor review. I wanted to show everyone how to use the box method when factoring. I prefer students use this while we factor, which hopefully they can do and see the very easy pattern of using the box. And then when we get to multiplying polynomials and dividing polynomials, as long as you know how the box works, it helps greatly without having to use long division and things like that. Although you do long division with the box, it's just all contained and doesn't seem as messy. So I want factoring to be done using the box method. If you do use a different method, that is fine. There's actually several ways to factor. You can, as long as you show work, I don't care. But if you want to be able to do the things that I want us to do later in class, when we get to harder stuff, try to learn this box method and try to do this using that box method. So using the box method, we have excuse me, we have one term which has the squared power, we have another term that has just a variable, and then we have a constant. So in this case, our constant is 0. Okay? And then we draw a box. Now this is a quadratic, so it's going to factor into two binomials. So I draw a 2 by 2 box. I write in the first term. I write in the last term, which is my constant, and I get 0. You multiply those two terms together. So for things to multiply to a 0, because you multiply 10v squared times 0, to a 0, you know one of them is going to be 0. But these two terms have to add up to our center term. So in this case, a plus 25. So I'm going to get a plus 25v. That's what you fill into these missing boxes. One of them is a 0v. The other one is a positive 25v. Okay, and then you look and see what can we take out. So what I do is I totally ignore the second column. Okay, and I look at this column. I have a 10v squared and a 25v. What can come out of both terms? In this case, 5 goes into both 10 and 25, and v goes into v squared and v. So if I take out 5v, to get this box, I multiply this row by this column. So 5v times something gets me 10v squared. Well, 5 times 2 gets me the 10, and v times v gets me v squared. And to get here, 5v times something got me 25v. So 5 times 5 gets me the 25. V times 1, so it's just going to be 5. So 5 times 5v gets me 25. And that's a positive, and I do like to keep track of my signs. And then if I look at the back, going back to the top row here, 2v times what gets me 0? It's going to be 0. And to check your answer, 0 times 5, so this column times this row does get me that last box. So I have this factored. I factored it completely. I have a 5v plus 0, and I have a 2v plus 5. Now, we don't have to write a plus a 0. So you could just get rid of this and say, okay, well, 5v is 2v plus 5. And yes, hopefully you can look at this and see, oh, I can take a 5v out of each, then I'm left with 2v and 5, and get this same thing. But like I said, getting to know this box works very well. So these three you could just factor by seeing what comes out of every term and then factor. But then when we get to like number 4, we actually need to use our box here. We write in the first term and the last term, and we multiply them together. So I know this is a positive number. So to multiply to be positive, you either have 2 positive numbers or 2 negative numbers. So then you look at what they're adding up to, and they're adding up to a negative. So I know this makes 2 negative numbers. So what multiplies to 50 but adds to 15, and that'd be a 5 and a 10. Negative 5n times a negative 10n gets positive 50n squared. Negative 5n plus a negative 10n gets me negative 15. Okay, so that's my factor, so I plug them in. And again, if we ignore the second column, what goes into both terms? Well, just n. N times n is n squared. N times negative 10 is negative 10n. And then to get this top one, n times negative 5 gives me negative 5n. Negative 5 times negative 10 is positive 50. Okay? So here's my factors. So you just write that out. N minus 5, n minus 10. That's how we factor it. Okay? You might get to the point where you don't need to write this out. You just need to remember it. Multiply these together, and then these two numbers have to multiply to that as well, but they need to add to that center number. So if we go down to, let's look at 10. Okay. So I have an n squared, first and last term, so they multiply to a negative, which means one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So see, I'm doing this without doing the little tree off to the side. The little thing off to the side helps when we have a coefficient of x squared or the variable squared. In this case, in all of these, we have coefficient of 1, so these actually factor pretty quickly. And the multiplication isn't very confusing. So just know that we can multiply them together and write them off to the side. You just may not need to. Anyways, so I have a negative 36n squared, so it's going to multiply to negative, but add to a negative 5. So here's what I do if I have trouble seeing them. So in this case, I know it multiplies to negative 36, but this is negative, so my bigger number has to be negative. So starting with the smaller numbers, I know 1 times negative 36 equals, multiplies to negative 36, but does not add to this. Well, I know 2 times, let's see, it'd be a negative 18, but that doesn't add to negative 5. I could do 3 times negative 12. Okay, that only adds to negative 9, so I need to keep going. 4 times negative 9 is negative 5. So if you have to go through all the factors to find it, do that. So I get a negative 9n, positive 4n, and you factor them out. I have an n plus 4, and that has to be a minus 9. Double check, they do multiply to a negative 36. So I have an n minus 9, n plus 4. All right, so that is how I want you to use the box method. If you need some more help on this, I will be happy to do so. Just come and ask me some questions. And actually, I'll do one more. I'm sorry. I'll do one more. I'll do number 12 with you. And then you can do the rest and come ask me questions if you have them. So this multiplies to negative 21k squared, but adds to 4. Well, I know 7 times 3 is 21. This is negative, so one has to be positive, one has to be negative. The 4 is positive, which just means my bigger number has to be positive. So I have a positive 7k and a negative 3k, so this is k minus 3, k plus 7, and you write it out. K minus 3, k plus 7, and there you go.